everyone, and thank you for staying to the end of the day. My leg fell asleep during the last talk, but the reason the rest of my body did not fall asleep because it was actually such a riveting topic. So thank you for giving me something to go obsess over, and then I have to go figure out how to do the math, of course. So that was pretty dope. So here's an interesting thing to know about me, and now the lead crew knows this. They asked me, they said, "Hey, Bryan, you want to speak at our conference?" I'm like, "Sure." But let me tell you a couple things. One is I don't do email. And when I mean I don't do email, like some people are like, "I don't do email." Like I literally don't do it. The only way that I would know is that they would just eventually just ping me in the Slack that is only signed in on my tablet. So if I was near my tablet when this happened, I would know. So when you go look at the back of your badge and you see, hey, there's no title for Bryan's talk, that's because the email went into Nirvana or wherever emails go when you send them to me. So what I want to do today, and just before I get started though, I just want to say this. I spent a couple years in my house, and I talked to a lot of people on Zooms, and then sometimes I talk to people very blurrily in like Google Meets. And then sometimes people would just like send you some other random thing, and I would join that, like a WebEx or something. And it's nice to know that I am not the only 3D person in this world. It's really good to see that people have depth and perspective, which leads me into this talk about building a better bridge. Why did I pick this topic title? Well, the reason is this: alliteration is awesome. So this is pro tip, if you're gonna submit a talk title, alliteration. But really, I actually do have a story here. But the first thing I wanna do is, customarily, my second slide on any talk that I'm gonna put up is gonna be a picture of me. Because when we're watching this video in the future, I want everyone to think about this dude and that mug and that shirt that says dope. And you're gonna wonder, what is going on in his head? And I'm gonna tell you right now, the 3 C's of life. First one, computers. We'll all agree that computers are kind of neat, right? They paid for us to get here, and some of you all are computing right now instead of listening to me. The second one is cars. When I grew up, we were not wealthy. Actually, I shouldn't say that. We weren't poor, but just barely. And when I was a little kid, I said, when I get older, I'm gonna buy cars. And now that I'm a grown-up, I love cars. I like racing them. I like looking at them. Every time that this thing stops, I go outside just to look at what cars drive by. But the third piece, and the most important thing, because this is New York City, it's the culture. And when I say the culture, a lot of you are like, huh? What culture? Well, of course, there's only one culture, the hip-hop culture. And this is really big to me, so if I just start dropping random New York rap lyrics at you, just understand that I'm only paying homage to this very important island and to what it's made for me, or what it's meant for me. Oh, am I not? Oh my God, they gave me a mic. All right, so this is gonna be even better. But really, the hip hop culture, for me growing up, me being a black person in this country, me being a black person in tech, sometimes just the idea of hip hop has just kept me going. But actually, it leads me into this talk. And the lyric that comes to my mind right now is 1997, when Biggie Smalls died. He was going to release an album, but he died before the album came out. And on the album was a song called The 10 Crack Commandments. We're not going to talk about drugs, I promise. But the first line of this song was actually a sample of Chuck D from Public Enemy saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it went into the 10 Crack Commandments. So when you think about this talk, it's not me giving you 10 things about how do you become a better StaffPlus engineer. It's actually just me trolling you all with hip-hop comments. So let's get started with the talk now that I've vamped for 5 minutes. All right, so when we first start our journeys, and we all have different journeys, my journey started because my dad was in the Army, knew nothing about computers, and he worked in a salvage yard, and he saw that they were throwing away computer manuals, not even computers. And he brought home a stack of C programming manuals from the Army, and he says, you know what? All the smart people know these things. You can learn it. First language, C. So this picture here represents that journey that I thought I was going on. I thought I was out in the Midwest, headed towards the mountains, and there was nothing but road and adventure ahead of me. And that's how my journey started. But then I became a little bit more seasoned developer. And the road was still straight, but it was a little foggy, a little dusty. And you know, over that hill, where do you go? No one knows. But a few years ago, I actually learned there is no road, and it's all a swamp. So which way are you going to go, left or right? It doesn't matter, because each way you're going to get your feet wet. And this is very important for us to realize that once we've gotten to this level, that we realize that it's all a swamp, it's all muddy. You know what happens when you hit that point? You're a staff engineer. So, I don't know where this is going. This is, I'm actually just really happy to be up back on the stage here. So, the gist of this talk is, you know, I really appreciated all the talks that came before me, and I liked that, you know, there was lists of, you know, you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and you're like happy. And I'm like, oh, dope, let me take notes on that. And then I learned about AHP, like I just talked about. I'm like, oh, I can just do math, and you know what? I can make everyone believe that I'm already right. Okay. But this talk is actually a little bit different. This talk is more like you're training. So let's say you're a boxer, and this is apt. You're a boxer, and you learn how to bob, and you learn how to weave, you learn how to run 10 miles in soft sand. You learn how to lace up your boots, put on your gloves, put your mouthpiece in. You learn how to get into the ring. You square up with your opponent, and they punch you right in your nose. And this is something that we need to learn. There is no how-to or README at this level. There's a lot of people who are sharing some really, really great ideas and that worked in their situation, things that we should all listen and pay attention to, things that we can learn from, that realize, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there are no staff commandments. All right. So which is kind of funny, because I'm on a stage telling you how to do things or sharing my thoughts, but understand when I'm sharing my thoughts, I'm sharing them from my experience, and don't take it as a 1, 2, 3. Take it as a, well, I'll take that into consideration when I reach that situation. So another thing you'll notice about me is you never know when you go to a venue what their projector situation is going to look like. Some of you all might know this, but I actually used to run the largest open source conference in the world, where we would actually bring many, many, many thousands of people and sit them in a room, 12,000 people sitting in a room, and I would talk, and those backgrounds are really bright, so you could have pretty slides. But then you go into like somebody's meetup, and then you couldn't see them. So I either be a color, or be a picture, or it will just be black on white, or white on black, because contrast is key. So that's why you're going to be like, what's going on, Bryan? Not a lot of words. But I really want to go into this story about, and we started from the beginning of our career, but now we're a staff engineer. And where should we start? Well, we start with the basics, you know, basically lacing your boots up. And really, I had some topics here about what is a staff engineer and what should a staff engineer need to know. And the first item here is that you need to understand that, first of all, there's a boss and there's a leader. Boss, leader. They might be the same, but they might not be the same. And just because your title has something staffy or higher in there, you are a leader. So you have to remember that. So how do we lead without being the boss? Well, you don't have the ability to say, you are going to do this. So what do? Well, the easiest thing is, and if you all have children, you probably know this one. Well, you know, show a good example. You know, we don't We don't do foul things in front of our children if we hope that our children will never do foul things because they will listen to us. Whenever we are in projects, we take the initiative to move things in a better direction. And we also do something very important is we are accountable for the decisions that we make. I actually might have a slide about this one because it's so important. Whenever we say that we're going to do something, we actually tell the business and everyone working with us that they can count on us. And if we don't get it done, it's on our backs, not everyone else's. So the next thing is we have to understand that staff and beyond is about scope. So at VMware, where I am, and I only talk about this, I came to VMware on an acquisition. I literally know nothing about actually applying to VMware, even though I am on the senior engineer, like our senior levels promo committee, and I am helping rewrite the rules. I actually have never applied. I actually haven't applied to a job in a long time, but understand that it's all about scope. So at VMware, we have something called an MTS, Member of Technical Staff. It's kind of a fancy title, but it means that you are of the first 3 levels. And then we have a 4th level, which is a senior MTS, getting close. And then you have staff. And then you have staff 2, then you have senior staff, then you have principal, and then you have fellow, AKA, I invented virtualization or something like that. I'm not quite there. I'm trying to make a new category for just dope dude. And couple more years, I will be the first black fellow at VMware. I'm the first black principal too, so it's coming. But understand scope. Like we think that once you're the tech lead of something, understand it's a scope. So we start people off small. You get part of the app. That's yours. You're accountable. You tell us, really, you drive this. You are the person that is making this happen. And then we have staff 2s. You know what? You've been really good on part of the thing that compiles. We're going to give you that whole thing that compiles. And then we have a senior staff, which VMware is almost a 40,000 person company. And we don't make a lot of sassy things. We make more boxy, ship it out as bits and hope that you can upgrade it later type things. But with your senior staff, your scope is, everything that your business unit does. And if you're principal engineer, like I am, your scope is, whatever the hell you want it to be. And then we have to realize that as you go up, that your scope increases. Your responsibility and your accountability do not. And just remember that we don't throw people into the pool. This is why we don't take people who are junior and say, here you go, here's this hand grenade. Pull the pin and see what happens. So just remember that. And then the next thing is, actually, a little sidebar here. The first time that lead dev said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about influence. And then they're like, nope, you can't talk about that because someone else is. And I'm like, whoever that is, I'm going to their house and I'm burning down their door. And then I saw the talk earlier today and I'm like, oh yeah. That was actually a really great talk. But I still want to talk about influence. And actually this is more about influence and the myth of the 10x engineer. So I'm gonna be the first person, and actually I'll die on this hill. There is such thing as 10x engineers. I've seen them way back in the day in the mid-90s whenever we were using Sparks, when I was working at this web hosting company, and we were the largest web hosting company in the world. I saw people do things with Spark, and then people who do things with like silicon graphics machines that would still just amaze me. They are out there. But you know what? Everyone in here can be a 10x developer too. And it's actually pretty simple. All you need to do is go find 5 engineers on their team, do whatever it takes to make them twice as productive. So, I have this, and I have this, that's 10x developer. But also, keeping in mind that you, Staff Engineer Plus, whenever you're injected into any conversation, the outcome from that conversation shouldn't be your ego being stroked or you being called the smartest person. Really what happens is the presence of you being there, being that tech lead, however you are contributing to this conversation, that the conversation's outcome is better than when you weren't there. So you know what? Your job is actually to break math and make 1 + 1 = 3. And however you do it, that's up to you. But that is our job. And this also came up earlier as well. It's kind of interesting how a lot of us think alike. Like, we as, StaffPlus engineers are not super people. I'm not gonna lie to you. I got 4 good hours before lunch. I got 1 good hour after lunch. And then for some reason at 7 p.m., I'm ready to go for another 3. But in that meantime, I can only do one thing. I have ADHD, and I think I can do 10 things, but in reality, holding this mic and this clicker thing is actually stressing me out right now. It's like, next. So what we need to learn how to do is we need to learn how to delegate. And here's the thing. I would teach you all how to delegate, but the internet has been here for a long time. So I want you to search for levels of delegation. And there's a couple where people are like 5 or 7 or 10. Pick your number. But just start with 1 is I'm going to show you how to do this thing that I want you to do, and I'm going to walk you all the way through it, all the way through whatever, man. But you need to figure out what that level is. And you need to work with the people who are on your team to delegate things to them, because guess what? We become better when we do. And also, how you can get pushed up is by building a whole bench behind you. People don't realize that when everyone around you just gets better, yeah, you can go do something else. My job at VMware is to be able to influence 14,000 engineers. I don't even think about one engineer. I'm trying to think, well, what can I do to make 14,000 engineers better? And whenever I actually accomplish that, it'll be just like an episode of In Living Color whenever Keenan Ivory Wayans and his brother were the hustle men. And what would they always say? Mo money, mo money, mo money. Because at the end of the day, I love what I do. But I'm also, these cars don't buy themselves. So now, we're going to get past the basics here. And back to the topic of this talk. What do? We are the bridge builders. And originally when I thought about this, I said, I'll just create this whole poem about being bridge builders. Being a better bridge builder by Bryan. How does the world exist without bridges? You have the left side, you have the right side, you have the thing that's connecting them in the middle. That thing is you. I'll be on Canal Street later on if you really want some more, or up in Times Square. But here's what I'm thinking about bridges. And this is a majestic bridge. And when I thought I saw this picture on Unsplash, and they said that attribution was applicable, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm not attributing anything, but they're all on Unsplash. Just search for bridge horizontal. This is what we think about. Like, I'm a bridge builder. I'm this majestic suspension bridge that is leading these people across the water, and it's amazing. But you know what? The real world isn't like that. The real world actually might be smaller, where you're on a wooden path that's trying to go over a stream, and we just need something where I don't get my boots muddy. Or maybe you have a long distance to go, and you have to go through single file. And maybe, I wouldn't do this. This is actually a crazy picture. Who in the world is going to go across this suspension bridge? I'm sure there's some of you all in this room who are like, yeah, me, no. This is why I'm going to live to 100. But understand that sometimes we have to build treacherous bridges. We are that treacherous link that are keeping two things that do not want to be together. The product team and engineering management, they're like, blah. And we're like, no. I'll make you a sandwich. I'll make you some Kool-Aid, and we'll come together. But then also reality sets in. And sometimes I actually think this is a bridge you could cross. There's going to be some troubled waters. and things are going to be crazy. You missed a deadline. I work for telcos, and literally everything is an emergency, and you're going to run into that. But what do you have to do? You have to hold the two sides together. That's what you do as a StaffPlus engineer. So here's the hard part, and I've started reading a lot of books. This is what I do. I'm a book guy now. But it's come to find out I'm actually not book guy. I'm Audible guy. But you know what? Words are words, and that's just semantics, man. I'm getting through these books. But one of the things that I read about recently, and I think that we need to understand, is the ideas of failure and shame. You can't run away from failure. You can't run away from shame. What we need to do is build institutions and cultures that are tolerant of failures, because if you're not failing, how do you know if you're getting better? If you're constantly winning, how do you know there's not a better way to do it? You know what? I can always walk a mile in 20 minutes winning, but you know, if I don't set that time standard down to like 17 minutes, I can still walk a mile in 17 minutes. Down to 15 minutes. I live in the suburbs, so I'm not worried about the city. I can walk a mile in 15 minutes. 12 minutes, I can't walk. So what I need to realize is that I take failure to make my process better. And then there's the thing about shame. Shame is a hard one. All of us have felt shame. I'm actually feeling good. I have not shamed anyone in this room or any companies at all during this talk. But what about shame that's directed towards you? Because we will fail, and someone will come to you and say that you are a failure. Well, first of all, you turn around and you say back to them, no, I failed at that task. I am not a failure. And then what you understand is you say, well, shame will come. Shame is this monster that will sneak up behind you, and if you ignore it, it grows bigger. Whenever you acknowledge it, you gain resistance. And I learned this from a book that my therapist gave me. It's by Brene Brown. And yes, ladies, it's dope, isn't it? But I listened to this book because it was only 4 hours. I'm like, I can get through this. And she's made a couple, but this one was about shame. And I learned that, holy crap, instead of bringing in more tech training, we actually should bring in more psychologists to actually help us understand how we think. And now, my goal is to actually be shame resilient, which means that I am acknowledging that, shame happens. I am acknowledging that I'm not perfect to myself. We've got to start somewhere. And I'm acknowledging that shame will come again. So what's another thing that we need to think about as StaffPlus? Well, inputs versus outputs. And I just threw this in here randomly, this one and the next one. I just wanted to say this on stage. What we need to do is, when someone comes to us with a project, whether it be a people project or growing people, mentoring, sponsoring, or it be something that is in our technical wheelhouse, we need to stop thinking about the outputs of this action. Because guess what you don't have control of? The outputs. You only have controls of things you do, which are the inputs. So you know what? If I'm going to play craps after this, and if anybody wants to come, I have a pocket full of ones. We're going to do this on the corner. We're going to do this on the corner. You know what? I can only control how I roll the dice. I can't control how many $1 bills I pick up. I hope to pick up a whole bunch of $1 bills. And the same thing for you when you have your salary. You know what? I'm going to make $5 million next year. Well, what are you going to do? Nope, you didn't hear me. I'm going to make $5 million next year. We can't will these things. But you know what? I can plan to rob the jewelry store. Or, I can go get some VC money. Or you know what? I can, actually, I don't know any other ways to do this, but understand what I'm saying here. So, my favorite thing in the world. And I have only a few words on this. This is neat because it's called, there's this guy named Simon Sinek who wrote all these dope businessy books. And in one of his ideas, this thing called the Golden Circle. The best thing about the Golden Circle is I've never seen it in gold. And I had an opportunity to create it in gold because I actually made these circles myself, and I chose black and white. But the thing is that we tend to focus on the what first. What do I need? We need to pick, I need to start developing on this web framework. I need to do this, I need to do that. But we forget to ask ourselves? Why? And something I do with all my engineers, and they know this from me right now, they'll come to me and they'll say, Bryan, I have this problem, this problem with this Java thing, or this Go thing, or this telco, or this networking or Kubernetes thing. And I'll say, well, why are you doing that? And they'll say, I don't know. Well, I'm like, well, stop doing it. We're wasting both of our times right now. Because the reason why I do that, though, is it forces them to understand if you don't know why you're doing something, stop doing it. Why am I on this stage right now? Because you know what? The satisfaction of hearing you all laugh at my corny jokes and nod your head in agreement means that, guess what? There's hope in this world, and it's not all lost, and we still are growing and learning as a group, and that just makes me happy. All right. So we're on the other side now, and someone said, hey, Bryan, are you sure you're going to be able to have enough slides to make this work? And I'm like, yeah. We right on time right now, just to let you know. So let's make it our own. So at the beginning, I said something pretty provocative. There are no how-tos, no readmes. There's no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, staff commandments. But here's the thing. It doesn't have to be that way. Just because there aren't any and there is no guide for how you are going to succeed should not stop you from writing things down. As a matter of fact, just write things down. Write down if something was hard, write it down. If you made an architecture change, like we were just talking about with an ADR, write it down. If you have a conversation that you need to have, like Scott brought up earlier, don't have that conversation in email. Write it down somewhere else. So whenever I'm added to this conversation, because I'm always at it last, I don't have to come in as a plus Bryan, and now I look just like, oh, really? You're going to single out that you didn't add me in the beginning? Just write it down. Just write it down. This should have been just a write it down slide. And then 2 more things. Embrace uncertainty. 3, so in January of 2020, I went to Seattle, to talk about why I thought CI and CD were silly. And Jez Humboldt was in the room, guy who actually invented the term CD. And I sat in front of him and said, you know what? This is dope, crazy, all this, but none of this makes sense, and this is why everybody did it wrong. And I blame you for Jenkins. And that was uncertainty. And you know what? I embraced it. You know what he said back to me? He's like, yeah. I mean, I don't have his really posh British accent, but he's like, yeah, you're right. How can we do this better? But also what you should do in your jobs, and you should know this, is that you're going to have to embrace uncertainty. Your job is uncertainty. It's the best thing. What are we going to do tomorrow? I don't know. Try and take over the world. It's uncertain. So last idea here, and this is the most important thing. I am a VP at a public company who's also an IC. To some people, that is like the ultimate part of a career. And I'm like, really? I can't do anything else? There's got to be something else we can do. Can I be CEO or something? Are there any IC CEOs? I don't know. So don't stop growing. And this is actually the last thing that I'm going to say. Realize that we are at the beginnings of this. As I read in the RAND StaffPlus Slack, as I read in the Lead Dev StaffPlus Slack, as I read in Will's book, and then whenever Hanya decides to release her book, no, it's actually not, oh. No, we're like, oh. Understand this. We are really making it up as we go along. And the best part is that where our growth can go is unbound. We literally can do anything within our nerdy ranks. We're not going to topple financial markets or anything. But just remember that you can do so much more than you're doing right now. And just because I like bridges so much, I'm going to leave with the bridge.